PowerPoint that hopefully we get through and then basically go through what the local plan consists of. And then we will each need to read it for the changes that have been made if we don't touch upon the minutes. So basically, this is just an overview. So all SELPAs are required to submit a local plan to the CDE for approval, and the purpose of the plan is to ensure access to special education and related services for all individuals with exceptional needs that reside within the geographical area served by our SELPA, and to assure compliance with all federal and state codes and statutes. And so we have multiple districts. We're a multi-district SELPA. And so we also have to include the county office of ed. So there's a process that we have to go through to amend the plan. So if we have changes that need to be made, we need to put together a group that is going to go through that process. And then a plan can be amended at any time, but especially if there's new legislation or court decisions, if there's findings of noncompliance by the CDE, or if there's a change in the SELPA's membership, governance, or any other element of the plan. So an example of that would be lots of charters are petitioning to be like a district, an LEA, with a SELPA, a multi-district SELPA. And so when they have a new member come or a member leave, then they have to resubmit their plan to the CDE. This is who served on our group this year, and in your plan that can be found. Pardon me? It's a little further in, but we actually have all of this in your plan listed out. So
yeah, you're right. Page 9.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, in your packet is page 9.
Okay, thank you. So yes, as you can see, we had Director of County Services, 4 Directors of Special Education, an elementary principal, Community Advisory Committee member, Special Education, General Education, and preschool teachers, Amy Fiddy, and myself. The approval process, we have a series of forms that we have to submit to the CDE. So once the plan has been approved, then we will get the signatures of all the superintendents. We have to have copies of the board approval from each and every district and submit the plan. Oh, and the CAC chair has to sign off. And then we submit the plan to CDE for final approval. So here's our timeline this year. I have the dates here that we all met to go over the plan, and then the local plan committee meetings by the CAC, and then the first and second readings by each of the advisory committees and superintendent's council. And then finally, we plan to have local plan approval by the superintendents at a joint fact pack and soups meeting on April 25th, so that it can go to the local governing boards in May, and then with the intention of having it approved by the CDE, hopefully after we submit it in June, so we can start the year with a new local plan. So this just goes through again what I just told you about the process. And then as you look through our plan, you will see that we have each of these areas in our plan. We have to talk about the governance of our SELPA and the administrative structure. So we have done that. We have a whole section for that. And then regionalized services and program specialists, what their duties, roles, and the rest. Community Advisory Committee that's been established in our CAC, in our SELPA, the CAC bylaws, a part of the local plan, and evidence that the CAC has reviewed the plan prior to submitting it, which we have done multiple times. Then responsibilities of the participating entities, that would be in our case the districts, because we don't have any charter schools currently. So the county office of ed and the governing board for each LEA in the policy making process, their responsibility, the superintendents in the implementation of the plan, and the special ed administrators of each LEA in coordinating the administration of the plan. And then it has to describe hiring, supervision, evaluation, and discipline of my position, the allocation of funds from the CELPAs to the LEAs, and so you will see tonight that we are going to be looking at the fiscal allocation plan. That is how we describe the way that our funds flow from the county to the CELPA out to the districts. And so that is being revised because there were lots of changes made to funding last year. So we have to acknowledge that we have that in the local plan, but we keep it as a separate item so that we can update it as needed. And with all the changes occurring, that's a good thing. We have to talk about the operation of special education programs, the monitoring of appropriate use of funds, and preparation of program and fiscal reports. And you know that every year we have the annual service plan and annual budget plan, and we have to have a meeting about the annual budget plan. And so we have a section in the local plan that says we hold those meetings and that those documents are available upon request. And that's what I just talked about in the first bullet here. They're kept separate because we have to do them annually, and that way we don't have to send the full local plan every year to the CDE, because I don't think they want to read 127 local plans every year. The annual service plan and budget plan have to be adopted at a public hearing, and so you recall last year before the superintendent's council meeting in May, we held a meeting immediately before that. The superintendents were here. We reviewed the annual service plan and budget plan at the superintendent's meeting that morning. And they can be revised again during the year. This tells you what we have to have in the annual budget plan. This talks about what we have to have in the annual service plan. That says where are students being served within each of the districts, who's providing the various services. And then charter schools, we have to have a section in there about what would we do if we had charter schools. And then in addition to that, we have to talk about early childhood special education 0 to age 5. And we have to have a copy of the agreement between us and the provider of services for children 0 to 5 in our local plan. And then we have to talk about how members of the public can address questions or concerns to the governing body, description of the dispute resolution process, and description of the process to oversee and evaluate placements in non-public schools. We also have to talk about how specialized services and equipment will be distributed, and assurances that the special ed will be provided only after general ed resources have been considered and utilized. And then we have to describe how we make revisions or amendments to the plan. We have to have assurances that all students in special ed will participate in the California Reading Initiative, that we provide staff development on literacy to teachers, and that students with disabilities have full access to all required core curriculum, including text, instructional materials, and support. So that's a safeguard for our students to make sure that they have the materials they need. Then we have a series of assurances that we have to provide to the state, that we provide free and appropriate public education, and so on and so forth. Do you have questions about any of these topics? And I go on. Good news, we just found out last week at State SELPA that if we had a district that had a disproportionate number of students in a particular subgroup in special ed, that we would have gotten a letter. So we didn't get a letter. So that was all part of the process. And the elements of the local plan kept locally. Local agreements shall include but are not limited to a coordinated identification, referral, and placement system, which we do have in place. Procedural safeguards. You know, every time you go to the IP, they offer you a copy of the procedural safeguards. We have a budget that is open to the public and a description of the method used to distribute state and federal funds. And then the interagency agreements. California Children's Services provides medically necessary occupational therapy services, so we have to have an agreement with them. Head Start, migrant and seasonal Head Start, and then also regional centers. So we do have those. And then we have to have our policies and procedures. And next year we will start updating our policies and procedures, so you will get the opportunity to see those. And then we have to have a policy on program transfer, which I think you're all familiar with, the behavioral intervention plans. These are the legal references. So that is that. So if you have any questions.
I have two. The MOU with Inland Regional Center, is that still in effect, in existence? I haven't seen a copy of that.
Yeah, it hasn't been updated.
It has been updated?
It's the most recent that we have, yes.
And is that available online on the WESELPA website?
Should be a portion of our local plan that's currently posted.
Because I thought at the very back it just says that there's a page for it, but then there's nothing there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay,
So,
so
yes, so that will certainly be added into our revised version. We are working with Early Start to finalize that one, and CCS. We have whatever is most current. The issue with CCS is that when we had AB 3632, when counties provided mental health services in that districts, somehow when they wrote that law, they incorporated CCS into that. So they were part of that MOU, and now that the MOU with county mental health went away, we have a separate one with CCS.
and then the second question is the PowerPoint that you just went through. Are you able to email us a copy of that?
Sure.
Okay, great.
Sure. Karen, do you want to make sure we get a copy of this? I'm sorry, which? The PowerPoint. Oh. Okay, so the local plan, we'll just walk through it real quick. It shows you all of the educational agencies. Our table of contents, of course, will have to be updated to reflect the changes. And then we have all the required sections, certification of participation, compatibility, and compliance assurances. This is just a document that we're obligated to have in here showing the state that we have met all those requirements, and it gives the ed code citations. Then we will have an updated copy of this signature page that the county superintendent will have to sign off on. And then also this one that is the Community Advisory Committee Chair, see right here, has to sign off on that, so we will have that taken care of. And then we will have a new signature page like this. And an updated copy of who was on the committee. The elements of the local plan, and I sent this to the chair of the local plan committee at State SELPA. The elements are not something that have to be in the local plan, they're submitted with the local plan. So we will be submitting that to the state separately, but it will not be in it to then reduce the number of pages of our plan. We actually went through an exercise with the work group and determined where each of these is in our plan, but that may have to be adjusted with the change in page numbers. So we go into section 2, governance and administration. And so I'll share with you that my system here when I set this all up for our meetings was anything in yellow, I knew that we needed to cross-reference it with something else that was in the plan when all was said and done. Blue was something that I talked about this section and made no change. Changes or amendments to the permanent portion of the local plan, which excludes appendices, only may be considered during the annual service and budget plan process. So the Superintendent's Council may adopt amendments to the permanent portion of the local plan on an interim basis, not to exceed 1 year. So what this is saying is once here at our annual service and budget meeting, they can go ahead and adopt changes. They can only be good for 1 year, and then we have to send a revised local plan. Program transfers, just aligning that with page 49. And then we talked about receipt and distribution of special ed funds to district accounts for the operation of special ed programs and services, and confirmed that that is how our RLA, or our responsible local agency, which is the county, San Bernardino County Superintendent of Schools. So I checked with Janet Crabtree, who was our program manager over there for fiscal at that time, and she assured me that that was correct. And then the Superintendent's Council, remember it said it has to outline their responsibilities. So those were all listed here. And the one I checked on September 24th, provide leadership to the SELPA regarding the development, revision, implementation, review of the local plan. And we decided that was okay the way it was worded. Throughout, they talked about various ad hoc groups that were going to meet temporarily to accomplish a task. So we have changed the name throughout from subcommittees to work groups, because if we are forming a committee or a subcommittee, we will be holding that under the Brown Act. But there have been some fiscal requests from the superintendents, for example, since I've been here on very specific topics, and we've brought a few people together, so that's what that's all about. And then just confirming that if you were to ever come to our fiscal advisory committee meetings, it said in one place that I facilitate meetings, and then here it says that Tim Chapku's position, the fiscal analyst, serves as the chairperson. But it also said that I could designate somebody, so we decided that was just fine to leave it the way it was. Talked a lot specifically about who is supervised by whom in the SELPA. And I thought we're really locking ourselves in that if we have a change in the configuration of our staff. And so we changed that to say at the bottom here, the supervision of the West End SELPA staff would be determined by the SELPA administrator, and then an organizational chart showing the staff to be supervised by the members of the SELPA management team will be provided to the governance committees annually. And I think you've seen that one chart that we've done, one showing who is supervised by whom, and the other one shows the responsibilities within the departments. Counseling services, page 24. It talked a lot about children, and so we decided when it said children to change that to students. So we said the SELPA employs licensed counselors to serve students receiving special education. At that point, we didn't know with the program take-backs how many counselors we were going to have on staff, and the superintendents have approved 2.75, so we will continue to have some counselors. And the strikeout is, again, about the supervision, who supervises who. And then program managers, staff and curriculum development. We had that at one point. We left it here in case that ever happens again, but indicated that some of the people in that department would, in addition to who is here, school to career, is the vocational team members hired under grants including Transition Partnership Program, Workability One, and the Columbus Grant. And then the program specialists are employed by the SELPA and serve the SELPA, we added in districts. The bottom page 24, where it talks about research-based data, we changed it to the more current term of evidence-based data. Wherever it said regular education, we changed it to general education. And then the behavior specialist, we took out the part about the supervision and just talked about the functions of the people in that position. We were informed that county program operations is not the current title, so we changed under administrative services, West End Student Services, and it did say at one point that that person reported directly to me, and we changed that to say they collaborate together with my department. We used to have psychological assessment and services, but the districts now perform that, so we took that out. So now on page 28. It's interesting that the annual budget plan and the annual service plan, it said that the annual budget plan shall be distributed to the local education agencies and the community advisory committee for review upon approval by the superintendent's council. And that's backwards, because as you know, the various committees have to see it and give their input because they're advisory. Then it goes to superintendents for approval. So we changed it in both of those situations to say a public meeting shall be held annually to provide the community advisory committee and members of the public the opportunity to review the annual budget plan and annual services plan and provide input to the superintendent's council. Upon approval by the superintendent's council, these documents shall be submitted to the LEAs and the California Department of Education. So we're saying once they're finalized, we'll give a copy, but the process is now cleaned up to flow the way that it should. Same thing with number 17, the annual service plan is with the budget plan. Somehow when I numbered these pages, it didn't put 29 on there, so that's at the bottom, so there's no 29. We'll get that cleaned up. On item 18, interestingly, it only talked about students with severe disabilities. So I went to Ed Code, the little blue box below, and in C, it says to pupils with severe disabilities and low incidence disabilities, and in D, it said to pupils with non-severe disabilities. So we just took out the word severe and left it as students with disabilities. And then you'll see that we put general education there in red. And we did discuss the little phrase about even if one or more disabled students benefits from these services, and decided that was appropriate. Selection of representatives for development of the local plan. We had some really interesting language in there about bargaining units and all the rest, and it was mind-boggling to think when you have 10 districts, the county, and WESELPA, whose bargaining unit you would go to. So we took the language that you can see on the next page, selected by their peers, and that is what we put for future reference. We added in the word procedure on number 22. Number 23, Community Advisory Committee. We didn't think there was a need for the word normally, so we just took that out and put parents, teachers, or community members interested in appointment to the committee contact, it did say their local special education director, and so we changed that. In fact, that whole line should be struck to say the WESELPA districts have a board-approved policy which outlines the process for nomination, selection, and board approval of CAC members. And so that is what should be followed in each district depending on what their policy is. So the close working relationship is maintained between the WESELPA administrator and the CAC. We thought that just wasn't clear enough, so we said the WESELPA administrator works collaboratively with the CAC. And at the bottom, any concerns or recommendations determined to be of importance by the group may be communicated to the administrator. We put presented at CAC or other WESELPA governance meetings, because you have that option, for consideration in the rewriting, because it's not a given that it'll be included, so we set the consideration. change yearly to annual. So communication will be forwarded to parents through the district directors of special ed, because we don't have the ability to do that, and we think it's more appropriate for the districts to do that. So as we move down through the goals of the CAC, number 5, we said establish procedures for parents and other interested parties to volunteer as aides or assistants in the classroom. You know, these days, people who are volunteering have to be fingerprinted and everything else, and so that's definitely a district process, and so we took that out, and these will be renumbered accordingly. And provide a parent representative to participate on the evaluation team for the local plan. It's the review of the local plan. And interact with parent groups and individual children. We change it to students. There was nothing else until number 12. Assist in developing due process procedures regarding the selection and utilization of parent surrogates. We put receive training, because if a CAC member wants to become a surrogate parent, they would receive training. And then parent education is facilitated through the network and communication of the Community Advisory Committee. Informative presentations are given during some CAC meetings to provide parent education. In-depth parent training series are available through the WESELPA to CAC members and all parents in the district served by the WESELPA. The CAC members continuously seek to recruit additional parents to participate in the meetings and activities. We had some misassignment of roles in some of these places, so just kind of cleaning that up. And then we move on to the charter school policy. Remember I said we have to talk about what would happen if we had a charter school in our membership. And so Shauna Pettit-Jenkins and Anna Ingalls-Rucino reviewed this, and on part B there, we changed where it says the status of the individual charter school to say dependent or versus independent. And the importance of that is, if you're a school district and I come to you and say, I want you to charter, to accept my charter, then you would be voting for me at the WESELPA, because I'm just a member of your district. If you come to me as a WESELPA director and say, I want the superintendents to consider me at the table with the superintendents to have a vote, because I want my charter school to be an LEA or a district, then that's a very different situation altogether, where now they're independent of a district operating on their own. So we just wanted to put that clarification in there. So it goes into everything about charter schools. And then section 3 is the literacy policy. Remember I told you that we had to give all students with special needs who were able to have access to the California Reading Initiative, and so we inserted the Common Core state standards where appropriate, because that is what California has adopted. Wherever it said research-based, we put evidence-based. We took out the line about realize increased average daily attendance for students in special ed programs to provide consistent opportunities to learn to read, because we didn't feel like we really had any ability to increase the average daily attendance. And then Common Core again, where it says number 2 at the bottom under 28. WESELPA provides staff development opportunities, number 2, that support reading. We put literacy programs in the areas of reading, writing, speaking, and listening, because literacy really includes all of those, not just reading. So we just wanted to expand that.
Would you want to add, Matt, to that, being that some of the Common Core is
This
so
one is
much-
literacy.
Oh, just.
It's a literacy policy, so we wanted literacy to include all of the various components components of literacy. Which one could make the argument in story problems and stuff, you know, it does involve literacy, but it's specific to literacy and not math in this particular instance. We talked about the annual service plan and budget plan. Remember how it's an annual process, and so we have to have these descriptors in here, but the actual annual service plan and budget plan are maintained in our office, and you will be invited to the meeting. I believe it's May 30th or somewhere around there for us to adopt that again. And Tim confirmed there was no need for edits there. Then we have our bylaws. So we have a variety of bylaws. We have bylaws that apply to the districts and the RLA and the CAC. So basically, it outlines the purpose of the WESELPA, and then it talks about the parties. So you have the 10 districts and the San Bernardino County Superintendent of Schools. And then it talks about what the RLA, or San Bernardino County Superintendent of Schools, is responsible to do. They receive the money and then perform all business functions for us, including when we release the funds, that they actually distribute them to the districts, or when we bill back the districts for certain things that we cover up for them, and they take care of that transaction. Talks about how the voting is and the purpose, the advisory committees that we have within our governance structure, and that the superintendent, in number E of San Bernardino County Superintendent of Schools, will be the chairperson of the council. And then they talk about who will be voted as the vice chairperson. And we currently have a rotation. Superintendents agreed to last year, and then Joseph is currently vice chair.
Quick question about the voting. Since the 10 districts and then the San Bernardino County Superintendent of Schools is considered a party on page 1, and then under voting it says each member of the council shall have 1 vote. Does that mean that the San Bernardino County Superintendent of Schools has a vote as well?
I'm thinking that it goes on later to clarify that, Kristen.
Okay.
And I may be confusing with one that I've seen in other places, but typically, I need to see if I can find it. I'm not finding it right now.
Okay.
But I was thinking, I know lots of times it's if there's a tie, then they are a tiebreaker. Says here meetings will be scheduled each calendar month with the exception of July and August. We're not holding 10 meetings a month, so when this goes to the superintendents on March 28th, the second meeting, I want to ask them how they would like this to be done. Okay, and then it goes on the program advisory committee, which is the special ed directors. And they asked me, could we change it so that I facilitate the meetings? Because what we're doing is each meeting, a different special ed director has to come in and facilitate. And sometimes finding the time to come in and meet with me to go over, you know, what's on the agenda and that sort of thing, it's just easier for them if I facilitate it. So when this is approved, if it's approved the way it's written, then that will be what will happen. And we said that they would have a minimum of 6 meetings per year. The Finance Advisory Committee, here's what I was telling you on D, that it says that I would either facilitate the meetings or select a designee. So we're good with how we're doing it, and we can just leave it that way. Page 48, committee activities. All formal committees in the special and local plan will have designation, membership, and purposes determined by the Superintendent's Council. And then we added in that all the meetings will be they'll all be held under the Ralph and Brown Act. But it's interesting. Read what it said before. Attendance at scheduled meetings will be restricted to designated members unless the committee chairperson agrees in advance to the attendance of non-members. The only exception of this policy is the Community Advisory Committee, whose objectives are defined by law and whose meetings are open to interested community members. So 10 years ago, it was actually written to say that if you had wanted to, you could not go to PAC or Supers.
Several parents, not myself, can attest to that happening here, where they came and they tried to come to the PAC superintendents and they were not allowed in.
Check to see what year the Brown Act was implemented. But,
That's a good move.
yeah, well, we just needed to have it legally compliant here. So, bottom of page 48, it actually said in order to comply with new legislation or to comply with the wishes of the participants, and we thought, wishes just aren't going to cut it, so we put agreements. Imagine if we just went with our wishes. Okay, the public transfer policy is there, and we know that we've had a lot of transfers in recent years. Public presentations to the council, just change the order of that paragraph in the middle of page 50. It's the same language, it's just moved around. And then I need to confirm a practice on the bottom of page 50. It says the superintendents want a coordination meeting every January. Until this year, they actually hadn't met in January. So I think it's easy sometimes to lose sight, and if you have new superintendents and or new group members in any group, and you don't review what you had written down, it's easy to lose sight of that. So we'll check with them to see what they want on that one. And then we go into agreement for participation in the West End WESELPA, which is really defining a lot of things to do with the SBCSS as our RLA. I don't believe we changed anything there. Regular education to general education, so that was minor. And then in the middle of, what page is this? 55, it listed California Department of Education as the State Department of Education, and it's referred to as the CDE of California Department of Education, so we made that change. Then we changed who the current county superintendent of schools is, because it was then I believe it was when Herb Fisher was. So then we get to the bulk of the changes on community advisory committee bylaws. So we had multiple meetings, and I tried to memorialize, the different requests that were made. And so you will see in yellow comments from multi-plan standing committee meeting held 12/11, comments that Christy subsequently sent to me, and then other in red you'll see from the actual work group that was meeting. And so the actual changes, though, I believe are minimal until we get to membership. Remember we talked about each district having a policy. So Article 4, Section 4.1, the third paragraph, where it says at least the majority, the strikeout says current members may suggest prospective CAC members to their district director for consideration in the selection process. So to be aligned with everything else, we said the selection process, I should say, is determined by each district as approved by the governing board. 4.2.2, the word effect should have been affect, so that was no. 4.2.5, each unified or high school district may nominate one student with exceptional needs residing and enrolled in the district. It's student nominees shall be reviewed by the CAC, and selected student representatives shall be recommended for approval by their respective school board of education. I guess there's two ways we could do this. They could be recommended for approval, but in the end, it is the superintendent's council that approves them, because you're taking potentially 3 students and getting down to 1 that will have a vote. 5.1.1 on page 63. It just said all meetings shall have 5 days prior to public notice be open to the public. But we said all meetings subject to the Ralph and Brown Act shall have 72 hours prior to public notice and be open to the public. So that's aligned with current law. So here's where we had a lot of discussion with Christie and made some, I think, really good changes about the officers, because as you know, we have had a chairperson, a chair-elect, a vice chairperson, a secretary, and an immediate past chairperson. And so it's kind of been kind of gray what the roles of some of the people were. And so I think we cleaned that up really well, and Christie had a lot of good input on that. And so we have eliminated a vice chairperson, because in any organization that has a chairperson elect, by design, that's a person who's being groomed then to become the chairperson in the next term, or when the chair terms out or opts to leave or whatever. And so that has been replaced, we're recommending, with a parliamentarian. So you will see here what the roles are. So we added chairperson elect will serve as chair in the next term. And then we said parliamentarian to assist the chairperson in keeping the meeting focused on the agenda and to follow parliamentary procedures and those required by the board. Just 7.2 added for the art and writing contest. 7.2.1 talks about the executive committee, took out the vice chairperson, added in the parliamentarian. 7.2.2, this was talking about the committee you're chairing, public information and membership committee. It did say that committee would assist in providing the media with information regarding CAC and its activities. We took that out because it would not be appropriate for any committee to be going directly to the media. But members will provide information about the CAC to interested persons in the local community. The committee will work collaboratively with the CAC secretary regarding membership vacancies, member term of office, and ensure that the membership stays in accordance with the CAC bylaws and California Ed Code. So it's cleaning up the one that Sharon is chairing. Then here's yours. Parent and Community Education Committee will assist in educating students, parents, and school staff in the community about individuals with exceptional needs through newspapers, newsletter articles, and organized educational presentations. It will coordinate with the SELPA to plan and deliver training topics and or presentations for the full CAC. Members will assist and participate when appropriate and available in in-service activities, parent education, and giving CAC training. So that sounds like exactly what you're doing there. On page 68, where it talks about the role of the sub-administrator, it had help develop, or whatever. So we just changed it to say develop and organize program of publicity and public information. On number 8.6, inform local, county, and state legislators of the special needs of students with exceptional needs. Gosh, we really have that stuff. On 8.10, provide information concerning in-service training individuals may wish to attend, because we don't want to limit it just to CAC, like at our last training, we had 60 people. We certainly want to have as many people as we can benefit from those sorts of trainings. Christie had asked that we look at having a budget, and we're going to talk about that tonight. Did you all have a chance to review what we are currently splitting the CAC within the packet? I think it's amazing. This section, because the governor repealed the fifth mandate in the Hughes bill, will be taken out and replaced just by policies and procedures that we have related to neighbor interventions. So that whole section is removed. There have been significant changes to policy and procedure on that, given that he aligned us with federal, which is good. Long section that opens up. All of this comes out. And we have the annual service plan grid and the interagency agreements, which are the agreements that we talked about that we would have in the regional center, the CCS, that we'll start. And sorry, we got a late start.